You're listening to ayahuascapodcast.com.
So one of the best ways to work with ayahuasca, in my opinion, is to understand that ayahuasca is an incredibly powerful tool for healing. It's the reason why people come here, right? Like if it wasn't, no one would travel across the world to come take this medicine. It tastes brutal. It makes you puke. All of that stuff people have put up with for thousands of years because it's such a powerful medicine. And so being able to just trust that that is going to work, that you have entered into, that you have the privilege to enter into this incredibly ancient healing tradition that has been carried forward by immense labor for generation after generation. And that just by working with the medicine, there's very little really you kind of have to do. It's actually pretty convenient. A lot of people, myself highly included, come in with this sort of Western mentality of productivity, of perfectionism, and we think there's something we need to do with ayahuasca, that we need to just have it all now, boom, 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 and we're going to make progress.
This episode is sponsored by LaWayra Ayahuasca Retreat. At LaWayra, we combine affordability, accessibility, and authenticity. LaWayra, connect, heal, grow. Guys, I'm looking forward to hosting you. Hi guys, and welcome to Ayahuasca Podcast. As always, with you, the host, Sam Believ. Today I'm joined by Mark Bodner. Mark is a Brown University graduate. He is a slackline aficionado. You might have seen him on some of our Instagram videos performing his stunts. Mark balances really greatly between monastic Zen work and plant medicine work. I think he's been a great facilitator here. So before he leaves, we have decided to sit down and have this conversation to collect some of his observations and learnings, because here at working at an ayahuasca retreat is it's like a time machine when it comes to collecting wisdom and knowledge. So Mark was a chief facilitator at LaWayra for 1 year. We talk about how it feels being punched in a ceremony, talk about ayahuasca and Zen Buddhism. We talk about facilitation, shamanism, bringing your parents to drink ayahuasca. We talk about what happens when you do 100 ceremonies in 1 year. We talk about projection, regression, and transference, and so much more. You will enjoy this episode. Mark, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Sam. Great to be here.
Mark, tell us, how did you end up at LaWayra in the first place, and how did the path happen? How did you end up becoming not just a facilitator, but chief facilitator?
Good question. This is a challenging interview because I feel like my time at LaWayra has been a little bit like that light tunnel when you go, I forget what it's called in Star Wars, when it's like just they go light speed. And I feel as if I've just come out of that. I'm like, oh, like what happened there? So I'm trying to organize everything and put it into a story. There's a great Zen story. I love my Zen stories. An ancient master asked one of his students something along the lines of, what can you say about life before you were born? Something like that. And kind of in the classic ancient way, he paused and I think he thought about it for like 2 or 3 years before he gave his answer. And his answer was, a painting of a rice cake can't satisfy hunger. And that kind of comes to mind for thinking about how the hell I got here. Like, I can walk through all the life events that brought me here, but ultimately, as we exist in the ayahuasca space a little bit more, it feels as if there's some sort of puppet string, and giving an answer doesn't capture that. But from my kind of human, conscious, free will perspective, I like to joke with people when they ask, oh, like, why did you first end up at a monastery? I was like, oh, just a great life with no suffering, and thought I might as well add a deep spiritual path to it. The joke being that, like most people, I came to Zen, to ayahuasca, through a pretty robust period of suffering in my life. To anyone who's been here and kind of heard my story, they've heard it before. But I've had a lifelong relationship with depression. And I think I remember first thinking about suicide in like 7th grade. That just kind of went in waves throughout my life, but reached a real pit towards the end of my time in college, when I was at this Ivy League university getting straight A's, doing everything right by social standards, and yet was just in this deep, deep pit of self-loathing, of hopelessness, of suicidal ideation, and just isolation. it took a while to kind of grow and mature, but that the chasm between how I was feeling and how the world was telling me I was doing kind of woke me up to there's more going on here. And that I'm a very curious person, that question mark of what is going on with both living a good life, right? Like if I'm doing everything right according to social standards and I'm feeling so miserable, there's some disconnect here. So from the external perspective, how do I go about living a good life? And then from the internal perspective, once I got some space from that depression, I could see that my mind was creating the reality I was living in. And I mean, you can take that on a sort of mystical and spiritual level, but just from a sort of psychological perspective, I was living in the world, but it was totally colored by my pain and suffering and kind of navel gazing.
With a slight tinge of negativity.
Yeah, that's right.
I've heard Mark's story many times, so I kind of know it by now.
That was kind of, I would say, what I would describe my time in high school as like, I think I say like an emotional gray with a tinge of negativity. This time was just all negativity. It's like a tsunami of negativity. But yeah, so the question was, what the fuck is going on with consciousness in the mind if it can make the world a terrible place in which I want to kill myself, and if it can be this joyous place that I've experienced in other times. And so that kind of set me on this path of looking deeper into consciousness and into how do I live a good, intentional, connected life. Part of that, as you mentioned and as I mentioned, brought me to Zen practice, which has been a huge cornerstone of my kind of exploration of these questions. And then I started exploring plant medicine more robustly too. Anyone who works with plant medicines knows that it's kind of one of its cornerstones is just what is going on with consciousness. What is this thing that we're all experiencing as the water we swim in? So that was kind of the starting point. And then just a whole, I think when people say ayahuasca called them, for me, that call was just a path of teeny little things that eventually culminated in arriving here. I was traveling with my girlfriend. I was reading a book at the time, and it was the first book I had ever read that mentioned ayahuasca and ayahuasca retreats. A month later, we kind of hit a crashing point, and we sat down, sunburned, lonely, annoyed, frustrated. And I was like, well, we have 2 weeks before our next flight. What's the one thing that we want to be doing right now with our free time and the money that we've saved up? Ayahuasca was my answer because of that book. And then LaWayra was the one place that had availability in the time that we had. We booked our flights, we arrived here, and then like 3 ceremonies, I was certain that I was going to come back. And so there's the middle picture, which is my kind of personal history. There's the localized picture of just the serendipity of teeny little things pulling me towards this place. And I think there's a really zoomed out picture of how the hell should I know?
So what in your ayahuasca experience here made you want to come back and volunteer? Because you began as a volunteer, just like, yeah.
Again, I think it happened on multiple levels for me. First, I just had an incredibly profound personal experience with the medicine. I was like a month or 2 out of the monastery, and so I had felt as if I just had this massive spiritual experience. I'd done a good bit of psychedelics. I had freebase DMT, mushrooms, acid, whatever you want. And so I came in kind of with this like hubris or ego of like ayahuasca is supposed to be powerful, but I've done a lot of stuff. I'm in the know. And I remember really clearly, I was here for a week, 4 ceremonies. After my 3rd night ceremony, I was like, I had to leave the ceremony space because I was really buzzing. It was back down when we were down there. I was on this beautiful hill next to my favorite bench, overlooking the valley. And I was just like, what the hell did I just drink? Like, what is that? My mind was blown. It's the classic ayahuasca ceremony experience. And then my next ceremony, I went like 5 times as deep. It was crazy. So there's a personal experience of like just ayahuasca is a pretty strong magnet. But more than that, honestly, I think was the communal experience and just seeing all of these people from all over the world coming to this one place to work on themselves and to heal and to try and live a better life and to try and answer these questions that I was asking, but more so to do it in community and to step vulnerably into the challenge of being vulnerable and of going through this path. And I was just super inspired. I think, I know you talk about this a lot. We both do. most people, I think, in the modern Western world are highly isolated. And so the community aspect was a huge element of what drew me to LaWayra. And then I would say the biggest part was stepping back and having just come from the monastery. I was kind of like had seen the back end of a lot of the work that happened. And so I had the strongest connection with the team that was working here. The old head of facilitation, Jared, seeing the amount of love and hard work that went into facilitating this. It didn't just happen meaninglessly. I was really inspired by that act of service and by the love and effort and care and hard work that went into facilitating the experience that I had myself. And then there was the special LaWayra stuff. If it felt, it wasn't like $7,000 to be here. It felt as if there was a sort of heart and soul to this place. It felt exciting, and it felt like the most meaningful way I could spend the next few months of my life.
And obviously after that, you decided to become, you showed promise. So you got a promotion. So after doing your volunteering, you obviously showed promise. You're a pretty smart guy, I must admit. I've admitted it on camera. And you decided to kind of stay and kind of climb your ranks to the chief facilitator position. So explain to people who haven't been to LaWayra while you were here, what is that? What does that role mean?
Well, if you do come to LaWayra, you can just think of anytime anyone's kind of talking to you, just imagine that being me. Sam has a great line. I don't know if you've said it on the podcast before, but running an ayahuasca retreat is like running, a hospital, a restaurant, and a hotel all at the same time.
A hotel, a restaurant, and a psych ward, yes.
I haven't thought of as good of a summary for me, but essentially what my job was everything involving the patients, all of the patient's experience here, from just the kind of hospitality element of living and being comfortable and feeling taken care of, to if you are deep in a journey, you have no idea where you are, have no idea who you are, you have no idea what time is, you're afraid, you're paranoid, guiding that person. So that's kind of the spectrum. In between would be giving a lot of speeches. I'm pretty long-winded, as you can hear from the podcast, and I would give, I think, like 5-hour speeches to try and orient people to both ayahuasca, the plant medicine, and also the way that we do it here, both at LaWayra and within the Inga tradition, which is the indigenous tradition we work within. I would be the one that was kind of facilitating word circles, and so word circles are an essential element, in our opinion, of working with ayahuasca and of building that community container. And so both giving people feedback, because ayahuasca is such a challenging, confusing thing. As someone who's seen a lot of people moving through it, I would be giving the feedback and trying to help contextualize it, do some integration work, down to serving rapé. I was translating for Fernando. And so I learned a huge amount from just hearing what he had to say to the patients, organizing notes to pass on to him about safety for taking ayahuasca, pretty much just everything involved with serving ayahuasca to people safely and in a way that will help them grow. And just for me, the sort of umbrella that spans the spectrum from hospitality, making sure someone has a towel when they need it, to guiding someone through probably the most intense spiritual experience they've had in their entire life, was building this container. Container is a super common word that we use to describe what happens at LaWayra, but when people come here, they're entering into a communal container that is the set and will determine, or is the setting and will determine the set for their experience with ayahuasca. And so just giving all of the love and care I could give to people to make them feel safe and ready to step into that vulnerability.
You can add to it managing ceremony team,
Yep.
and volunteers,
Yep.
and also creating the operating procedures and just kind of like paperwork for the
Yep.
for the team to use. So as you can see, it's a challenging job. I've done it myself, and as you're leaving now, I'm picking up a lot of slack, and many other team members are going to take other parts. So hopefully, eventually, we'll get another capable individual like yourself. Maybe you're listening. You never know, but you have to volunteer first. It is a difficult job, but obviously, what are the benefits? What have you learned by doing this work? How do you compare yourself on physical, spiritual, psychological level, as opposed to when you came now, like in this year? Has there been a learning curve? Has there been an improvement?
This is when the sort of light tunnel feeling starts coming on of looking back at the year and trying to move through it. I guess another way of saying is it's a little bit like, as Sam said, the challenge of this job is it feels kind of like being in like a whitewater river. You're just like being bounced around, trying to keep your head above water. And you're like learning to swim, but then you get out of the river and you're like, whoa, like, how could I describe that? The first time I think we said this joke to ourselves was after my first month here volunteering. The first ever group that I volunteered as a facilitator with was, I think, the second most or top 3 most difficult groups ever come.
Second most challenging group ever, still to this day.
Yeah,
like nothing came close.
Yeah, just and that was my first ever week. And we've had what, like over 50 groups?
12 times 3, 36.
Well, for me personally, but then in LaWayra's broad history,
probably this times 3.
Yeah. So
close to 100.
Really saying something, and it was the first group that I ever worked with. We said, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, or it cripples you.
What doesn't kill you makes you crippled.
Yeah. So far, I haven't been crippled. And so I think that goes to show everything I've experienced here has made me stronger. I haven't been crippled as far as I can tell. The abbot at the monastery I was at had a few catchphrases that he would say all the time, and you would hear it, and I would think that I understood it, and then I'm noticing that just like every single month I realized that I didn't understand it and now understand it a little bit more. And one of his catchphrases was, Zen practice is being in the center of your rolling ball. And so life and circumstances are always going to be rolling you around, but can you stay in the center of it? And I think a word that comes to mind when I think of that is unflappable. And I feel as if I've maybe just one step, but I've taken a step towards being a little bit less flappable by the conditions of life and the winds of change, towards being more in the center of my rolling ball. And it's very challenging because one of the things I've seen from my work here and from ayahuasca, and I think the way that life works is you never finish. Like if you're looking for a challenge, life is the best place to start. Like it just is constantly evolving with some new thing. But on that path towards just being centered, being a little bit less emotionally volatile or reactive, I think that's the main change I can see in myself. And also I think in combination with that is the sort of strength and capacity I have to move through this path that comes with going through that process of entering the rolling ball. Importantly though, I think like when I heard that at the monastery, I was just like, it part of what I didn't understand is it felt like something that just comes about, or you think about it hard enough and then you're in the center of your rolling ball. Throwing out a bunch of Zen stuff here, but another visual that I really like, it's part of a Zen koan. It says, the patch-robed monk having passed through the forest of thorns is like a snowflake in an oven. And the imagery there is this monk with a very old, dirty robe with a bunch of patches all over it. And he's just passed through this forest of thorns, which have been ripping at him and kind of cutting his skin and tearing at his cloak. And once he has passed through that forest of thorns, he's like a snowflake in an oven. He's just constantly resetting, being born anew, evaporating into nothing. And I think a big part of the work here has been, it's been a bit of a forest of thorns, in ways of, there have been a lot of challenges, there's been a lot of difficulties, but that is what is actually required, in my opinion, to move forward on the spiritual path. Pain is one of the best teachers.
As Mark likes quoting Zen koans, I do quote like sayings that I picked up, sort of Eastern European or when I was working on ships. But there is a saying that white ship, black work. So like a white vessel, let's say cruise ship, and the black work. So if you see a white ship and you think like, wow, this would be great to work on that ship. It's so beautiful and. But in reality, and I worked on a cruise ship myself once, it is a completely true saying that seafarers say, because if you see a white ship and it's nicely polished, it means somebody has been polishing it. It means that working there is even more challenging than working on a rusty ship.
Yeah.
So what happens here at LaWayra, I believe, is a lot of people, as you probably know, are very happy with their experience here. Not only it's affordable, but the facilities are at a very high level. Everything is really well organized and everything flows, and it builds a lot of trust. And this perfection, so to speak, comes at the cost, and the cost is taken by the team, and of course, largely so by whoever is had the facilitation, because you need to collect all of that, and you're the damper that dampens the good and the bad, and making it stable. So in that process of learning and observing processes of close to 1,000 people in your year here, what patterns have you noticed? And most importantly, what would you tell, based on that observation, what is the right way to do ayahuasca for long-term healing?
I think the first pattern that is tied into what is the right way to do ayahuasca for long-term healing is that it is really, really challenging for people to be patient with their healing process, to understand that pace is not something that is just put on us to frustrate us and to make us practice patience, but is actually an essential element of the healing journey. And with that is tied this sort of like the power of ayahuasca and this, how hard it can be to be humble in the face of that, particularly when you haven't taken it. And so time and time again, people show up, understandably so, because of the way that ayahuasca has been framed in non-indigenous circles, but they show up wanting to, boom, just be teleported right to where they want to go and finish their healing path and just be better forever, which is a very human and understandable urge. But it's just, I've seen hundreds and hundreds of people show up with that desire and just not have it fulfilled, because I just don't think it's how life works. Unfortunately, you can't just go to a foreign country, take a magic medicine, and be healed from the human condition. So one of the patterns is just instant gratification, which it's intensified by the narrative we have about ayahuasca. It's intensified by the sort of modern psychology that can get its dopamine hit at a moment's notice. But not understanding that this path is, I mean, truly it's, it sounds trite to say, but it is a path, and there is no just teleporting to the end. And one of the biggest things I've personally learned, honestly, in the past month, as I've stepped back from my role and taken a little bit more time to focus on my own healing, is you can do, like, I've drank, I think in the past 16 months, I've drank like 130 ayahuasca ceremonies. I've seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people come through here, go through this very intense healing process. I've been the person that's been guiding them, and still I can see that I've just chipped away at my sort of emotional core, or made a few steps forward amidst the steps back. I have not, by any stretch of the imagination, arrived, and as always, my sort of intellectual understanding of this path that I'm on is far beyond my sort of core. So one of the patterns is impatience. It's really, really challenging to be patient with ayahuasca. And so one of the best ways to work with ayahuasca, in my opinion, is to understand that ayahuasca is an incredibly powerful tool for healing. It's the reason why people come here, right? Like, if it wasn't, no one would travel across the world to come take this medicine. It tastes brutal. It makes you puke. All of that stuff people have put up with for thousands of years because it's such a powerful medicine. And so being able to just trust that that is going to work, that you have entered into, that you have the privilege to enter into this incredibly ancient healing tradition that has been carried forward by immense labor for generation after generation. And that just by working with the medicine, there's very little really you kind of have to do. It's actually pretty convenient. A lot of people, myself highly included, come in with this sort of Western mentality of productivity, of perfectionism, and we think there's something we need to do with ayahuasca, that we need to just have it all now, boom, 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 and we're going to make progress. understanding that ayahuasca is just working in itself and that change needs to happen over time. I mean, there's myriad analogies, but if you try and build a tower in 2 weeks, then it's going to topple over because you haven't spent time solidifying the foundation. And so patience and trust in the medicine will carry you super far. That should be paired, in my opinion, with just gratitude for the actual ability to drink ayahuasca. So, some anthropologist says that when the Spaniards came to South America for the first time, they gave them the gold and hid the ayahuasca, which is, I think, something you've said. Even if you just think of it temporally, right? Like, depending on your anthropological study, ayahuasca as a medicinal spiritual tradition has been around for 4,000 and 8,000 years, making it one of the most, if not the most ancient spiritual traditions in the entire world of human existence. Pretty much, I would personally say ayahuasca has only been like widely accessible to people not from indigenous communities for 20 years, max kind of like 60, depending on how you want to define widely. And so if you look at this massive timeline in which ayahuasca has existed, in the just how privileged people like us are to be alive in a time in the world where we're actually able to take this medicine, gratitude just for being able to do that, I think carries people really far. And so that's number one, the pattern of desire, of impatience, of hearing that ayahuasca is 10 years of therapy, which it is, but requires other steps to fall into place. And so that's number one.
Everyone wants 10 years of therapy, but they don't want the work required to receive 10 years of therapy. It's like, imagine going through 10 years of therapy. The process will be as intense as having 10 years of therapy in 1 week. So it's like,
it's an accelerant. Like
there will be a lot of work that will need to be done. So
I also like to say that, like, if the 10-year of therapy experience with ayahuasca is like the desired outcome, we call working with ayahuasca a process, because a huge amount of kind of like insignificant or seemingly minor prerequisite steps need to fall in place for that ceremony when you get 10 years of therapy. And so, like, sometimes what you need are like 2 ceremonies of just puking and purging and kind of shaking and sweating. Sometimes you need a 3rd ceremony that's absolutely brutal and super challenging to arrive at that 4th ceremony. And so that, like, to get to that place requires the patience and pace. So that's number one. The second pattern that I've seen is kind of a pretty fundamental cornerstone of maybe the human psychology in general, or just a lot of people, is just hating pain and discomfort. This is one of the final points that I give in my integration speech. Is I think we as humans, on a very fundamental, if you're kind of Freudian on the id level, or just the subconscious or kind of the animal part of us, hates pain. We hate discomfort. We hate fear, boredom, sadness, all of these things just on a deep level we don't want to feel, and we will do a lot of things to avoid it. I personally think this is a root or a significant contributing factor to drug addictions, to addictions of all sorts, be it gambling, porn, sex, alcohol, all sorts of things. I think it's why we live in a culture where we have dedicated a huge amount of resources to developing technology that allows us to constantly turn ourselves off from feelings of boredom or pain or sadness. Just pick up my phone and scroll. I mean, I am as much a part of this as anyone else. So I think that's kind of the starting point of, there is something deep in us that doesn't want to feel some underlying pain or fear or sadness. And we are really, really adept at doing that in ways that we don't notice. Like, we had one patient here he was actually here for like 2 months. He was kind of a challenging guy. And after being here for 2 months, and I think he drank like 20 ceremonies, he was saying, like, Mark, like, I agree with so much of what you say, and like, really inspiring thoughts, but it's like, I don't think you're right. Like, I actually really seek out feeling pain. Like, I try to feel my pain. And he had been one of the most avoidant patients I had worked with. And so, like, our mind is so sneaky at making us think that we are doing these things, but on a deep animal level, we're getting away from it. And I've also seen, as a pattern combined with that, if we don't feel our pain, it will destroy us. I think that is what brings people to, a lot of people, or at least the people who are mainly looking for relief from really exhausting physical or mental pain and illness, is that when our pain doesn't just go away, we can't run away from it. It needs to be felt, it needs to be processed, it needs to be let go. And if it's not processed by the mind, by the emotions, it gets stored into the body until it wreaks havoc on our immune system, on our muscles, on all sorts of things. And so those two are wrapped up for me. On the one hand, so much drives us to escape the suffering that exists as being alive. It's just a part of life. I mean, for myself, as I mentioned, I was so struggling to just confront how sad and lonely I was, and the fact that I didn't feel as if I could reach out for help. Just I could not just be with that feeling that I almost killed myself. Like I hated my pain so much that I was like, I'll just fucking die instead of feeling this. But the only way that I've gotten out of that place has been by confronting it, by accepting it, by finding what's on the other side, which is a huge amount of wonder and beauty and mystery. But as we say, you need to go through to get out. So that's number two, is pain. And it's I think our aversion to it is what traps us in it. And one of the beauties of ayahuasca is that it helps us actually go towards it. And if it's being done in a sort of traditional way with a team that's experienced, with a shaman that's highly trained, then you're always, we say titration. It's like a chemistry term for slowly introducing something so that as far as I understand, the reaction as a whole isn't overwhelmed by the introduction of a substance. As long as you're being titrated with ayahuasca, you're going to be taken into what you need to see, be that the pain that is protecting you from your healing core, or that core that is love and beauty and joy and connection to everything. You'll be brought towards that. But one of the most important things, in my opinion, about taking ayahuasca in this indigenous space is that that process is happening, as I said with the first thing, at the right pace. Because if you're just like blasted in, then you can start feeling things that you've been running away from for your entire life, feel overwhelmed, freak out, be traumatized, never want to work with ayahuasca again, and then remove yourself from the ability to take ayahuasca. That's super, super rare, I think, with ayahuasca in general, and particularly here because we do this work in a responsible way, but is a risk. And so number two recommendation from my number two pattern would be make sure that the place you're going understands ayahuasca as a medicine that is bringing us to the sort of core of healing, which is understanding our relationship with suffering and connecting with the love and joy and beauty that oftentimes that suffering is kind of keeping us away from. A place that understands that's what ayahuasca does. And so it's not just some drug to give you some crazy experience, blast you off and, touch God's finger. That's part of it, but it needs to be done in a responsible way. And if you go somewhere that doesn't know what they're doing, there can be legitimate harm that comes from that. So that's number two. The third main pattern that just kind of came to mind when you asked this, I think another really fundamental element of the human existence is just wanting to connect with people. Really, it's remarkable from our perspective as staff to see we have 3 groups come through here every single month. Almost, without fail, when the group steps off the bus, they're at kind of like a very low emotional, energetic, vibrational, whatever word you want to use state. They're kind of closed off. They're like, who's this person? It's kind of competitive. It's very reserved. It's a group of strangers, of course, that's just how we are. The 4-day groups, even they experience it, but mainly the week groups after 7 days, simply with the labor that we as a team do to build this container and encourage people to be vulnerable and authentic. And we have a major assist from ayahuasca as well. People have created these relationships that are on a true and I do think real level, deeper than a lot of the friendships that they've had for years, because it is founded in connection, in vulnerability, in authenticity, and in the desire to be real with someone. And I think seeing that happen time and time again with every single group, I can't think of a single group in which some form of deep opening a connection hasn't happened. Seeing that over and over again makes me think that that's a really fundamental element of being human, is the desire to be in connection, both socially with the people around us, but also I think with nature and the world around us. something Fernando, our shaman, always says is we live in a world where we're being encouraged to think of progress as concrete jungles, big cities. And that's good. There is progress in that. But what would the world be without real, fresh virgin jungles? If we didn't have jungles, forests, trees, we wouldn't have air. And so I think also another element is just deeper than human connections, our desire to be in union and in harmony with the natural world. And it's honestly, it's been really impactful and beautiful for me to see that as a fundamental element of the human existence. And so I guess to wrap it up on this question, long-winded answer, my third recommendation for doing ayahuasca in a safe, genuine healing way for long-term healing would be making sure that you are ready to do your part of stepping into that connection. Can you just be confident in yourself and ready to share that with the world? Being authentic, being vulnerable, stepping back and being honest about what is the stuff that you've been avoiding? What's the things that you might need to work on or to let go of to take that forward, and doing that in community. This is a communal medicine. I feel really strongly about that. And so doing it in a place that encourages you to do that communally rather than take your cup, go lie in your mattress, stay in a hammock for the entire day resting, and then come back to ceremony. I think it needs to be done with people around you.
Thank you, Mark. A great answer, albeit a long one. Mark is a man of not a few words. He's had
notoriously long-winded.
He had many words. So to sum it up, imagine a group of unhappy people, generally slightly low in vibration, coming over, very impatient, wanting a magic pill that transforms them in one day. We are, and Mark specifically, not for the last month, but generally for a year, the focal point of all this frustration, where he gets blamed for the reason that they're not getting what they want on the day number one, because you keep saying patience, so obviously it's your fault. And I know that is not your favorite part of this work, being the focal point of, let's say, if you're the person that enforces the rules, all the negativity gets projected on you. So talk to us about projection, regression, counter transference, and all those fancy terms.
Yeah, we've joked that another job title could just be punching bag. My last answer, I'll be long-winded, was a helpful transition into this question, so well done. I think the way I understand, and I have a good amount of experience with psychology and therapeutic paradigms, but I'm not formally trained, so I'll do my best. One of my understandings of how transference works, or projection more specifically, is we have our internal world of feeling, and when we can't just see it and take responsibility for it as our own, we look for reasons around us to project it onto. There's another podcast that I like listening to that was interviewing someone about chronic pain, and they're talking about how on a biological level, there is a difference between hurt and harm. So hurt is the actual physical sensation of pain. If you're feeling pain, that is hurt. Harm is if that pain is communicating real damage to your physical system in any way, right? So is your tendon actually exploding, or do you just have kind of pain in your knees? These two things are often interrelated, but sometimes there is difference or distance between them. But importantly, they said, when we hurt, we look for harm. And so that's kind of the cornerstone of how I understand the projection that happens here is people come in and they have stored up a lot of suffering through their life. And ayahuasca wants to get in there and start, kneading it like dough to try and get it softer, get some air in it and release it. But a lot of times people have to feel that. And as they feel it, it's really hard to just feel it and not have a reason. This is something I've been working really hard on myself, is when I'm feeling something, I don't need to explain why I'm feeling it. I could just feel that thing. And so as that comes up, particularly when you're in the suggestible state of ayahuasca, you are looking for reasons to be feeling it. So one of my favorite stories that articulates this is we had a patient who was here. and he was kind of entering into his process, and he was kind of like thrashing around, moaning a little bit. Not to the point that it was being disruptive, but usually when that starts happening, I'll kind of go over to that person, jingle my beads just to let them know that I'm there if they need anyone to support them, because that's kind of the transition point where you might be reaching a freak out. So I'm standing there, I'm jingling my beads. All of a sudden, he like sits straight up in his bed, rips off his eye mask. He's like, Mark, like, what's up, man? Like, how's it going? He's like, I'm feeling like the most love that I've ever felt in my entire life. And like, I just wish everyone could feel this. Like, this is the most incredible feeling. I was like, awesome. That's so great. Like, another person feeling this beautiful thing that we hope they do when we're working with ayahuasca. So I was like, that's great. Enjoy, man. Start getting up to go away. He's like, hold on. There's one thing. And I was like, what's going on? I need to be closer to the music. The music was over there. He was over here, and he wanted to be like really close to really feel it. He was like, but like, I don't know. I'm scared to ask. Like, I don't know if that's okay. I was like, oh, totally, man. Like, let's do it. He starts walking over. I'm like, you want your match? He's like, yeah, bring my match. I'm like, cool. Pick up his mattress, bring him over there, sit him down in front of the stage. He's like, no, like, I want to be against the wall. Cool. Move him over to the wall. Plop him down there. He's settled in. He's feeling happy. I'm like, so great. Another person having a nice ayahuasca experience. Go about taking care of the other people. 10 minutes pass, and I look back over, and he's just like you can almost see steam coming out of his ears, just red face, big frown, grimace. I forgot some people aren't watching this. I'm like, oh, this is new, this is different. And so I go over, I'm like, hey man, like, how's it going? What's going on? You feel okay? He's like, Mark, I do not understand why you put me here. I was not being disruptive, and I should not be here. I'm not comfortable here, and I want to go back. And he, for like 5 minutes, he was just furious with me. He literally said like that he felt like he was in timeout. This is like hyperbole of, I think, what happens on a lot more subtle levels of projection. So like this dude had literally specifically asked and chosen to be in that place. But then his process shifted, and he started feeling bad. And so his mind found a way to explain the bad feeling he was having. This patient in particular had shared in Word Circle about how his father had left him for like 6 years, and then he came back to the family, was like an authoritarian, really a disciplinarian, very mean to him. And I think that is where the medicine was bringing him. So he felt this beautiful thing. He connected with this, what I call a soft inner core, that we protect with all of our defense mechanisms. He'd been brought to that. But I think in feeling that love, he was confronted with the vulnerability of feeling that and the capacity for pain. And so his defense mechanisms came back in, and he started feeling pain. And then he was looking for a reason for that. I, as the head of facilitation, the guy that does all the talking, the figurehead, the one that enforces the rules, I was the recipient of that pain. He projected it onto me. He projected his father figure, the authoritarian, onto me. So that's just, I've come to the point where I just understand that is the role I play. It's not me. I think I actually do a very good job of this work, but that is part of the work. And that if I'm constantly fighting and trying to convince the person that I'm not them, or that I'm not their projection, it's just very exhausting for me. And so for the facilitator role, just accepting that is part of the job and part of this healing process is the natural sort of flashing that happens as people go through the healing, has been the very protracted journey I've been going on to understand projection, at least.
A great example of projection happened in a very last retreat. I'm not going to name any names, but a lady was going through a process where she felt pent-up anger towards men because she felt that they took from her and they disregarded her and they disrespected her. And even though men at LaWayra are extremely loving, everyone from shaman to facilitators, she needed to project that on us to process it. It's like, it's just a necessary thing. So for a day or two, she went into this mode where she was really upset with all the men. And then as she, together with the medicine, so it's a part of her process. And as together with the medicine, she was able to vent it out. She came to conclusion that because of how great the men are here, that there are great men around, and she was basically healed from that thing she was carrying around. But the facilitation work is difficult because you have to understand exactly what is happening to her, not to get offended.
Yeah.
To keep having that container for her.
Yeah.
To go through that process, guide her through it, knowing that it will resolve and not take it personally, because the moment you take it personally, that's
really challenging. Yeah, and I think that's like, if we're getting into the weeds of facilitation, I think that skill of not taking it personally is probably one of the more advanced skills. I think because it's so challenging, this kind of gets at countertransference, which is essentially like what transference is different but similar to projection. So we'll just kind of use them interchangeably right now. Countertransference, Sam is a patient. Countertransference is pretty much anything I feel about him. Oftentimes, though, it's emphasized by if he's being really mean to me because his father was mean to him and he needs to take out that anger on me. My countertransference would probably be stronger of, Sam's a really bad dude. I don't like him. Maybe I'm not going to help him or give him the care and attention that other people receive because he's being so mean to me. That is a super like human response and really, really hard to step back from, not get sucked into. And so for me, I think like understanding truly like this is the healing process and this is a role that I fill that people project onto it. It's not about me. And then also for the staff that do this work, having our own community is essential. So like Sam has been a massive support for me through all of this, the punching bag stuff that I've been getting, of having someone to process, to release, to kind of vent to, so that I can bring myself back to the center to work with the patient and not just like get sucked into this sort of childlike dynamic of he said, she said, or she slapped first, so it's okay that I slap.
I've been able to support you because I've been punched. Yeah, both figuratively and literally. And you've also been punched in your experience here. We can talk about it later, but it's a very interesting paradox. And I had this Jesus moment where I was in the ceremony, and obviously I've created this space to help people feel better. And obviously we charge reasonably, and there's so much love in it. And then to get slapped in the face by one of the patients and not being able to slap him back and having to be, in your piece. So that's like a very physical representation of this emotional things we're talking about. And then just to have him slap me in another cheek, like 10 minutes later. Cheek? Yeah, I'm no saint, but it was that moment. So it just kind of goes to show how complex this work is. Like people think, let me just start an ayahuasca retreat. I'll just get some ayahuasca, you pour it in a cup. And we're just basically scratching the surface when it comes to just the sort of psychological side of things. We're not even talking about the actual spiritual goal. Yeah. And, 1,000 of years tradition that's been required. So it is a very humbling notion. Yeah. So let's talk about being punched and broken and scratched, and tell us about some of those experiences and what have it taught you.
So just a disclaimer, or kind of to set the stage. Horror stories are, of course, way more fun to tell than like normal ones, but this sort of stuff that we're talking about is super rare. I want to say I worked with between 700, 800 patients, and I can only think of maybe 5 times in which someone got that one. And so it's not super common. But my first month after I finished my volunteering term and I came back and I was formally stepping into the head of facilitation role, we do, if you're not familiar with the structure at LaWayra, we do 18-day retreat cycles for staff. So we're working for 18 days, and within that we do 10 ceremonies. It was the first ceremony of the entire month, first ceremony of my tenure as head of facilitation. And I made the mistake of saying to a coworker, like, oh, first ceremony of the month, nothing's going to happen tonight. It's like, it's always chill. Cut to another patient, another classic moment. He took his first cup, normal size, and then he got a very small second cup, and he flagged me down and grabbed me, super agitated about having gotten a small cup. He's like, oh, I got such a small cup. What did I do wrong? Does the shaman think I'm weak, or that I can't do something? I should have lied to him. And then 30 minutes later, he was really frantically dancing on his mattress. Fernando was keep an eye on him. I was already there. All of a sudden he shoots up like a bullet. And this is in the old ceremony space where it had a charm to it, but it was like a sardine can. Like people were packed in, and he had jumped up and was in this very thin alleyway between the mattresses, like dancing like crazy, like frenetically thrashing all around. Could have kicked someone in the face. So I rush over to him, like, hey man, like, let's go outside. Like, if you want to dance, let's go to the dance floor. So like, you're not endangering anyone. He's like, I'm conscious. I'm like, oh, sick. Breaks away from me and sprints towards the bathroom. Again, in the old ceremony space, there was a single room bathroom. And because someone could have a deep process in the bathroom, we ask people to not lock the door. And so the door is unlocked and people don't enter because they know someone's in there if the door is closed. And so he busts into the bathroom. Someone is actively pooping, like ayahuasca poop, not something to be interrupted. They start trying to like push the door closed. I'm like, oh shoot, like now we really got to restrain him. Rush over, grab him by the waist. He like rips free, goes over to where Fernando is. Like it's like a 2-step journey. And honestly, like to his credit, it was a beautiful kick. Like it looks like a textbook like martial arts roundhouse going for Fernando's chin. Don't know why he didn't remember. But Fernando is sitting here playing his flute. He sees the kick coming. He gets about this far back, like a few inches. I run over, I grab him by the waist. If one of those two things hadn't happened, he would have just connected straight to Fernando's. Just like knocked the shaman out. So I grab him by the waist. The second I grab him, he rips around and just clocks me straight in the jaw. We wrap him up, and then we go. And I mean, of course, like the idea of being restrained while you're on ayahuasca, of course, sounds incredibly unpleasant. Reminder, number one, super rare. And number two, it is truly the only thing you can do to protect someone from hurting themselves or others. This guy was actually like pretty in control of his faculties. Most people are just like thrashing around when they need to be restrained. And if you're in that state, oftentimes you're actually not kind of conscious of your physical world. And so there isn't that same sensation of being trapped, right? Like it's not claustrophobic. Your body is really just like getting energy out. And so within restraints, you're able to do that while getting out. So there's that. But we restrained him. Eventually he came back down. We hugged in the morning. It was all good. But that was another great like introduction to this work on the first month. One of the things I learned from that I was thinking about as you were talking about being slapped is I think at the end of the day, sometimes saintly behavior is super easy and straightforward. Like we were joking a few months later, we had a new volunteer and I told this story and she was like, what did you do when he punched you? I was like, the only thing I could do is just like wrap him up and bring him over. And she was like, you didn't want to like punch him back? I was like, can you imagine? I think you said this, like, can you imagine ayahuasca retreat where you're tripping and you sit up and the facilitator's just wet like on the patient? Like, it's like, it was just like, when you're in that mode of caring for people, it's very straightforward. It's like, what can I do to take care of this person? And I think there is a saintliness in everyone, which is just going beyond your sort of personal reaction and dealing with whatever's going on.
That's how parenting feels.
Yeah, I bet.
Like your children, they like make you, they hurt you so much, but you have to keep loving.
Like, what are you going to do? Yeah.
Like, oh, it's like, oh, you just broke my new phone. Like, that's it. I mean, what can you do? You just keep loving him.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is a really challenging work. I do believe that I don't know much about karma, but you must have gained like lifetime worth of karmic points doing that work, and hopefully me too. Not that it's the goal, but there definitely is. There are aspects to it that are very difficult because we're used to sort of doing good things and receiving gratitude in return. And when the pattern is broken, and you're like, you're doing your best and you're helping so much, and in return you get this projection stuff or physical violence on you, that can be really hard. However, I do believe that this work and the word circles and all the wisdom and learning through people's processes, it's like a super accelerator. It's I mean, 1 year of being a chief facilitator, I believe, is much more valuable than 1 year in the university. Yeah. You mentioned a couple times old ceremony space. So for those of you watching us on video, if you're not, check out, find us on YouTube, at LaWayra YouTube channel. We're sitting in this beautiful Maloka. Maloka is a medicine house, a very traditional indigenous style building with a palm tree leaf roof and made from teak wood and campano wood. It's surrounded by nature in every direction. So this has been built about 8 months ago when Mark first joined. We used to do it in the area. Now, for those of you familiar with LaWayra, where we have our eating / co-working area. So what have you observed? What change have you observed after we started doing ceremonies in the Maloka? And just generally, what do you think about my designer skills?
It's, I mean, the changes are night and day. Like it's on a level that would have been impossible for me to predict. I just wouldn't have thought it was possible. I can confidently say that the most challenging ceremony we've had here, and by challenging from a staff perspective, I mean like people freaking out, like needing hands-on assistance, needing to be taken to a private area so they're not disrupting the group, running around trying to get away, stuff like that. Like that's a challenging ceremony for us. The most challenging ceremony we've had in the Maloka is kind of like would be an average one in the old ceremony space. And this gets, I mean, I think there's the obvious element, and I do think there's also the sort of more mystical, spiritual level to it. But from a sort of basic like consensus reality level, this space just makes you feel held. Like the old space was kind of, I think, psychologically challenging because that's where you do word circle, and so you'd be talking all the time. That's where you would eat your meals, and so you'd be eating there. That's where you would be hanging out with people, playing games, and then you're also brought into ceremony, and everyone has to be in an ayahuasca ceremony. It's just like really confusing. Whereas here, this is understood to be an exclusively ceremonial sacred space, and it has, I mean, if you ever look around it, it just has a sort of gravitas to it that makes you feel safe and held, and is a place that allows you to let go of control in a way that is calming rather than feeling as if control has been seized from you and you have no idea what's happening. So, yeah, the Maloka is a medicine house. It is the container that holds ceremony, and this one does it remarkably well. Your designing skills are excellent, Sam.
Well, thank you for mentioning it.
We've had someone who is a pretty experienced ayahuasca veteran, and she said that we have the best bathroom she's ever seen for ayahuasca, which is, if you've drank ayahuasca, you understand how important that is.
We have 8 bathrooms.
8 bathrooms. It got a little bidet.
For an average group of 20 people.
Yeah.
That means like no traffic jams ever.
Luxury.
So you mentioned that you had more than 100 ceremonies in 1 year. Like that's a scary number for most people. They're like, well, how are you still alive? You know, what have you observed by having that much medicine, and what is the main lesson?
Number one, it's also on ayahuascapodcast.com, is an interview with Rick, a South African shaman, and he and Sam talk about integration. And one of the things I've heard him say is that integration is kind of like a modern concept and isn't really a word that's used in Indigenous communities, because the idea of integration is combining 2 separate things. And so for most people, that's ceremony and normal life. I don't want this to come across as saying integration isn't important. Integration is absolutely essential to this work being done, but it is sort of a new thing in a place where you come to retreat, and then you need to bring that retreat experience back to life. For me, I'm definitely like a traditionalist. Like I like doing things in the way that the old ancients did. And so I've really appreciated having the opportunity to just be immersed in an ayahuasca bath, like just kind of like a tea bag seeping in the water of ayahuasca. From that, one of the main things I've noticed is there is no ceremony and not ceremony. With a sort of Western, somewhat dualistic mindset, it's very easy to think of ayahuasca and the work that happens with it as being, I come to ceremony, I take my cup, ceremony lasts for about 6 hours, I stop feeling the psychedelic load, I go back to my room, and then it's over. With so much experience with ayahuasca over the year, I can see that from a spiritual level, ayahuasca is constantly functioning. It's just the volume is turned up to the point that we can perceive it more. And so I'll find, like, I'll come into ceremony with an intention, nothing will happen. And then the next day I'll be confronted with some unique challenge that is exactly in line with the intention that I came in. And that's pretty fascinating to me. But also that like as I was talking about, I give speeches every month to people that come here. I'm giving advice on how to work with ayahuasca. Some of the key points, it's a lot more in depth than this, but the key points are essentially flow, trust, surrender, opening, listening, and courage. Those are kind of the core tenets. And I find that ayahuasca ceremonies are not something different from life, of course. You know, you're practicing life in ceremony. And so as this kind of binary between ayahuasca, not ayahuasca, between integration breaking down into just living in the world with ayahuasca, I see that I'm kind of always in ceremony. And that's been there's a really nice tie-in for that with me with Zen, where Zen talks about it's 24/7 practice. And so a lot of people think Zen practice is when you're meditating, but meditation is just kind of, you can think of as the ayahuasca ceremony. But once you are off the mat, you're doing the same thing, same practice. It's 24/7, and life is constantly teaching within that. So that's one of the main things I've kind of found from that.
What's your favorite ever ceremony? Can you recall?
Favorite is such a hard,
like, or some like very memorable vision or, you know, crazy psychedelic story.
Well, crazy psychedelic story definitely would be my day ceremony. So over a year and a half now, but when I was here as a patient, it was my 4th ceremony. And when we drink a day ceremony, we start at 7 a.m. Most people feel as if ceremony has meaningfully ended around like 10:30, 11:30. You're still tripping and you're in the afterglow, but you're not like deep. I didn't come back to understanding not even who, but like what I was, like that I was a human being, living form, until like 3:30. I remember at 3:30, I got into the shower and like feeling water on my body. I kind of remembered, I was like, oh, okay, like I'm a human. The way that ceremony went was, again, this is another thing I could talk about for 3 days, but took 2 very full cups and didn't purge at all. Connected with ayahuasca, and the way at that time that I was in communication with the medicine was through stomach convulsions. And so I would like ask a question, my stomach would convulse like that in a very perceptibly answering way. It sounds super wacky, but when you experience it, it makes sense. I was like talking with ayahuasca, asking it questions, making jokes. And then all of a sudden it was like I was not psychedelically blasted, but I could just feel on a very deep level, I think similar to your most recent ceremony, just the absolute perfection and oneness of all existence, but in a way that I was still functional. Like a lot of times people experience that and they're like on their mat, I was totally fine, but it was just, everything was perfect. It was like this beautiful, beautiful high point spiritually. And then pretty much the rest of the day was just a ever furthering descent into pain, confusion, and fear. It started with lots and lots of crying, which felt really good. Like just this massive purge, like sobbing, really nice. And then it kept going and it got scary. And this is me going beyond my pace. For sure. I was not a patient person. I was here as a patient, to the point that I was like, laid out on my bed, like flexing all of my muscles in a way that I had never done in all of the sports I've done. Eventually some guides came and they kind of calmed me down. Common ayahuasca experience, I was seeing how every single moment I had ever experienced had led me to this moment, in a way that's like obvious if you think about it, but when you experience it as reality, it's like it was terrifyingly blatant that like time had just flowed to this moment. So again, these things are fundamentally ineffable. Time totally disappeared. At first, I thought I had been there for like 4 days and 4 nights, and I was like, it's so nice that they're still taking care of me. Like, what generous people. And then time disappeared. I felt as if everyone else was a god, and I was the last god to be born because I had been so selfish and like egocentric. I felt like I was the most powerful god because I was the last god being born. I thought Yosemite Valley was right outside of the door, and that I could, if anyone chose Spike Ball, the beach game, I thought I was about to play Spike Ball, but they were like, no, you need to stay in bed. I was like, all right, that's probably a good idea. Eventually, I mean, it was beautiful and profound and well beyond my capacity to understand, let alone articulate. Eventually, where I was brought to was what I call nothing land, where there was absolute nothingness. If you think of not knowing and just make that the entire universe you exist within, that's where I was. To the point where I came, once I was coming out of that, and I could see, I could hear and perceive again. I was here with my partner. It was like 3:30, like really late. It was 3 at this point, really late. So she was really concerned for me, and she was laying next to me. I was able to speak again, and I was like, I'm really, really confused. Like, what? Like, I'm confused. And she's like, Mark, you're in Colombia. You've taken ayahuasca, and you're going through your process. And in my head, I was like, what the fuck is Colombia? And then 10 seconds would pass, and I'd be like, I'm really, really confused. I was just stuck in this loop. It was really, really frightening. But at the same time, it was the most profound and intense and beautiful and mystifying experience I've had my entire life. And so for me, I've come to the point where like good and bad just doesn't capture ayahuasca. It's just a matter of intensity. And that was like the intensity of life just turned up to the point that I wanted to experience it. So it was absolutely stunning.
In 1 year of facilitating, what have you learned about shamanism? And what do you think about our shaman?
Number one thing I've learned about shamanism is that it is incredibly, incredibly complex, and would take decades of intense study for anyone to practice well, let alone master. I think anyone that exists around ayahuasca long enough starts to tap into some shamanistic elements of reality. And so there's like, I mean, for me, honestly, I grew up as an atheist, and I identified as an atheist or agnostic until I was like, honestly, a couple of years ago. And so for me, number one was recognizing that shamanism is like a real craft. We often tell patients it looks like he just blows on the cup, makes some funny noises, hands you your ayahuasca, and then chills in a hammock. And you can be like, oh, it's easy. I could do that. He's not doing anything. But no, he's both exercising a skill set, and that skill set is really, really complex. And so there are certain programs where I think you can like go to Spain, study for 3 months, and all of a sudden you're a shaman. Excuse me, which is the same for me as like going to a summer camp and being like, I'm a doctor now. So it's an art form. What do I think of Fernando? I think, so I have only ever drank with Fernando. So I don't have a great comparison point from a personal perspective, but I've worked with hundreds of people who have drank with other shamans, and all of them are blown away by Fernando. I'm sure Sam has mentioned this, but Fernando is sixth generation shaman. But working with ayahuasca goes back a lot further than that. They take care of, grow, harvest, cook, and serve all of their own medicine. He has been formally training as a shaman since he was 7 years old, and has been kind of ordained as a shaman since he was 15 or 16, I think. One of the stories that I think captures it best for me is we had a patient who drinks a lot of ayahuasca, and is also a very kind of like orderly person. He had a spreadsheet where he would rank all the shamans he'd ever drank with on a 10-point scale across different elements. And among all the shamans he'd ever drank with, I think Fernando was like top 3. And so it's been a huge privilege to be able to work as closely with him as I have. But I still feel as if I'm anywhere close to what he's able to do.
Last question, Mark. Why did you bring your father to drink ayahuasca?
I'd be careful to say that everyone in the world should take ayahuasca, but I do believe
that everyone in the world should.
A lot of people could do well to drink ayahuasca.
Yeah.
My dad and I have had a pretty challenging relationship throughout my life, to the point of a few years ago, it was a kind of a breaking point of like, something's got to change, or we're never going to be close in each other's lives. From that point, a lot has changed, and we were able to get to the point where I really thought that it would both help him a lot personally, and I wanted to share this part of my life. I mean, this has been a huge part of me and my path, and so I wanted to share that. But for him, he grew up with an abusive, alcoholic, very manipulative father that wreaked havoc. He was also very poor. He was a scholarship kid to a lot of private schools, and there was a huge amount of exclusion and bullying and all of that that came from that. Only recently has he realized that he's been plagued with PTSD for his entire life from all of those experiences. He was always like, but PTSD is for like people who have confronted IEDs in Afghanistan and stuff like that. So he didn't feel like he could use that term, but that he truly has a clinical diagnosis of PTSD. And I knew for him that he just had a lot of stuff that he needed to feel and confront and let go of to be the person that he wanted. And ultimately, it came from a place of love and care. I love and care for my dad, and I wanted him to be happier and healthier. And I knew for a fact that ayahuasca would be a really powerful, profound tool for affecting that. So it was really important for me that he came and did, and he came, and he had, he said he had one of the best weeks of his entire life. And it was one of the, I would say, one of the specialer moments of my entire life to have him here. So get your parents to do ayahuasca. It was really incredible.
Yeah, my mom drank ayahuasca, my sister and my brother. My dad is the last one. In your case, your mom, you still have to, and your sisters.
Just before we wrap up, one of the things that Sam has said is when your family members came and drank ayahuasca, if this project of like self-growth and healing was pushing a car, you felt as if a few more people were pushing the car with you.
Yeah.
And I can feel that.
Lifting the intergenerational weight together. So, well, Mark, thank you for the podcast. We've been planning it for a long time. How do you feel, man? You're leaving, no more LaWayra for you. Will you miss ayahuasca? Will you miss LaWayra? Will you miss Colombia?
Yeah, absolutely. If you haven't experienced any of the three things that Sam just mentioned, you should. Colombia is a paradise. I thought recently, I was like, I just live somewhere where a lot of people come for vacation. I mean, it's perfect weather all year round. There's food everywhere, just like falling from the trees. It's warm. The people are really nice. It's got a beautiful history and topography. I mean, ayahuasca, it's pretty much the closest thing to magic that I think exists on the world. So that's pretty cool. And LaWayra has been my home, my work, my community, my family, my church, my hospital. So I'm going to miss it profoundly, and I'm definitely hoping.
Your restaurant, your gym, restaurant, my gym, your cigar loan. I could keep going.
But this is an indelible mark on my life.
Well, LaWayra will miss you as well. Me too. That's good. Thank you for the episode. Thank you for the good work. Mark has stepped in this position. He kind of mostly self-trains. I was too busy to train him. Because before he stepped into it, I was doing his job plus 5 more. So since then, I've hired 5+ people to replace me, and I'm still very busy. So challenging, but beautiful. And just ayahuasca, man, like whenever you feel struggling, you drink ayahuasca, and it's like, yeah. And you're like, I can go some more. Yeah. So beautiful. So whatever life happens, you're always welcome back. And guys, thank you for listening. This has been a very special episode. And I'll see you in the next one.
Thanks everyone for listening.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you'd like to support us and psychedelic renaissance at large, please follow us and leave us a like wherever it is you're listening. Share this episode with someone who will benefit from this information. Nothing in this podcast is intended as medical advice, and it is for educational and entertainment purposes only. This episode is sponsored by LaWayra Ayahuasca Retreat. At LaWayra, we combine affordability, accessibility, and authenticity. LaWayra, connect, heal, grow. Guys, I'm looking forward to hosting you.
Con la vida, vida de la baila, cura con la guaira, limpia, taita, vibra.